So the first thing I notice here is that I have x cubed, which means that I'm going to get 3 answers. So the first thing you always want to do is rational root test. So that's the thing where we're going to use our calculator. In order to use our calculator, we first need to identify the biggest negative and the smallest positive. So our biggest negative is always your last number. It happens to already be negative, but you make it negative no matter what. And then our smallest positive is always 1 divided by our Q number, and in this case our Q number is 1. So 1 divided by 1 is just 1. So now I'm going to go into my calculator. The first step you should always do when you put this in your calculator is to type in the function. If you don't type in the function, there is no way you're getting the right answer here. So I'm typing it in exactly how it was typed on my paper. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go into my table settings. So now I'm going to go to second window. My table start is my biggest negative, so that is negative 12. And then my delta table is 1. So since I'm starting at negative 12, I have to look from negative 12 to positive 12. So I'm going to go to second graph, and I'm looking for the blue numbers. I'm looking for a 0 in that column. So I don't see any on the screen that I'm on right now, so I'm going to keep clicking down. Oh, so I see a 0 here at negative 1, and then I have to go all the way until x is 12. And I don't see any other zeros. So we have one rational root, which is x equals, I think it was negative 1. Let me go back and check. Yes. So at x equals negative 1, that's our rational root. So there is one of my 3 answers. In order to find the other 2 answers, we're going to use synthetic division. So I'm going to take this negative 1, and that's going to be the number that's outside of my synthetic division. And I'm going to put all my coefficients in there now. So 1, 16, 3, and negative 12. I'm not missing any exponents, so I don't have to add in any zeros. Now, one thing I want to point out before we get started is when we get to the end here, this number better be 0. If it's not, either the number we think is a rational root is wrong and we made a mistake, or we made a mistake with our synthetic division. So you should not move on if you don't get 0 where that blue highlighter is. Alright, so bring down the 1. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. 16 plus negative 1 is 15. Negative 1 times 15 is negative 15. If I add down, I would get negative 12. Negative 1 times negative 12 is 12. And then negative 12 plus 12 is 0. So I did get that 0 at the end, which is definitely what we wanted. Now these pink numbers here, those represent A, B, and C for the quadratic formula. So quadratic formula I'm going to write up here is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and then everything's over 2a. So I'm plugging all these numbers in. So I would have x equals negative b, which is 15, plus or minus, and then I would have 15 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 12. And then everything's over 2 times 1. Alright, so now the next thing I'm going to do is put everything that's under this radical, so all the things that I'm highlighting in yellow, I want to put that into my calculator and see the number that it gives me. So remember that when you put this into your calculator, you're not putting in the radical, you're only putting in the numbers that are underneath. So when you put that in your calculator, you get 273. And 273 is not something that you can simplify. So we're done. These are my other 2 answers. So everything that I have in the box in green, that represents 2 of your answers. Those are irrational roots, which is why they didn't show up when we did the purple part. And then the purple answer is your rational root. So you have a total of 3 answers.